The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Oakland Sports, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and one of the hosts is here today. The other is expected soon. The present and accounted for gentleman is Jerry Feitelberg. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Ralph, and it's a great pleasure to be on the air with you right now.
Oh, what an additive you've been to the station. You and Nancy both have been terrific, and this is a nice thing we do, presenting the Finley years in a way that really clears up a lot of mystery about what went on. And I think the biggest thing for me has been the realization that it was Carl Finley, Nancy's dad, who was a very, very important man behind the scenes.
He was the nuts and bolts guy that ran the everyday operations of the team. He had to take care of making sure that the ballpark was swept, that the food was there, all the details of running the ball club. Well, Charlie Finley was the owner, and he was involved, as you know. He was a very hands-on owner and used to call the managers in the dugout, telling them to yank this guy or put someone else in place, or he was doing the managing from afar. He really wasn't involved with the daily operations of the club.
Right, and the way Carl was portrayed during those years was that, the organization is just left to Charlie's cousin or something to that effect. And he was Charlie's cousin, but he was also an incredibly capable man who not only was the nuts and bolts, but he was the calming influence of the Finley family. And
absolutely.
Absolutely. And getting to know that and reading through Nancy's book about those years has been terrific, and getting her firsthand accounts and the way, her tone of voice, the way she says it, her passion for it all. She wants the truth to come out about how it was. And
that comes through. And she really knows the stuff. She was really like a confidant of her father. Unlike a lot of children who don't know what's going on with their parents. Certainly, my kids knew I ran the business, but they didn't know what was going on in the business, whereas Nancy did. And that's a very, very unique situation.
Right. And she loved it. I mean, she just loved it. She loved the community of a ball club. We were talking about somebody the other day. I think I mentioned Mudcat Grant, and the real good possibility we're going to get him as a guest on the show. And the way she said, he was ours. He was one of ours. It was just, there was something in her voice that made you think, this woman is really involved. These people, it wasn't just a business to them. It wasn't like, I'm not taking anything away from the Giants ownership. They've got a whole bunch of folks in there.
You have to remember back then when Charlie owned the club for the first 14 or 15 years, they had the reserve clause, and the players were bound to the club. And they didn't have the movement that the players have now. So you could say, he was one of ours, because they knew that he was going to be there every year on a contract, one year, and they didn't have multiple year contracts in those days. And so, he was one of our guys unless we traded him. Whereas now the players can say, I don't like it here, I'm leaving. And it's a lot different feeling in Major League Baseball as opposed to back in the 60s.
Well, Michael Duca used an expression, the pendulum swings.
Yeah.
Has it ever, from the way it was when the owners basically, it was you were a slave, a high-paid slave, let's put it that way, but a slave nonetheless because you couldn't determine where you wanted to raise your kids, for instance.
Right.
And
Exactly. And
now,
Michael is right. The pendulum has swung. The owners used to have all the power. Now the players have the power. And you have to remember that nobody ever goes to a ball game to see an owner. They go to see the players play. It's the players' game. And they should have a say in where they go. Just like you and I, if we're working for someone and we don't like it, we say adios and go work for your competitor. And that's what the players have now. I don't find anything wrong with that. I think it's great.
Now,
except I wish
here's
we were
a
making
great segue.
$25 million. I hope we were making $25 million a year.
Yeah, well, the money isn't all of it. That's it's the feeling of freedom that one gets. You're in America, for crying out loud. You ought to be able to pick and choose where you go. Now, here's the segue, because I wanted to talk to you today, Jerry, about the Hall of Fame. The recent ballots have come out, and the first person that came to mind when you said, I can't think of his first name, Miller, who's at the labor negotiator who made
Marvin
all this
Miller.
possible, is not in the Hall of Fame. And someone like Bowie Kuhn is in the Hall of Fame. Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame. Walter O'Malley is in the Hall of Fame. I don't understand how Mr. Miller has not gotten the votes.
Well, they have two ballots really. Don't they have a committee that meets for the players that are sort of like the Veterans Committee? And I think Marvin Miller has to be considered on that basis. The players ought to thank their lucky stars that there was a Marvin Miller, because where would they be without him? Where would they be without him?
Absolutely. He's the most influential labor. They've got now the strongest union in the world.
Yeah.
So he built that up, and
but the owners don't. The owners don't want him in. Why would you want someone in that they hated?
Right, but they don't do the voting.
That's for sure.
So, anyway, the ballot comes out. I want your overall philosophy, and I'll just call it the Bonds-Clemens.
Well, Joe Morgan, the Hall of Fame baseball player from Oakland, and I'm friends with Joe's cousin, Robert. Joe is adamant. He played the game the right way. He didn't use supplements. And I can see where he's coming from, that guys that were using supplements a la Clemens and Bonds, although neither one of them, Bonds, I don't believe ever tested positive for it, and I don't think Clemens ever did either. But there's enough evidence from people who were selling this stuff. Bond said he used the clear and the cream, but he didn't know what it was. He thought it was flaxseed oil, or they told him it was flaxseed oil, and he didn't want to know what he was getting.
Right. Now, I will use the same thing. I've heard that before. He didn't know what he was getting. Can you imagine a world-class athlete who makes his or her, for that matter, living with their body and not knowing what is going in to their body 100% of the time?
I can't buy that argument. You can't. It's hard to buy that argument. It really is.
Especially when he was working with Balco, and
his trainer worked for Balco.
Right, and his trainer has notes about what was and what wasn't ingested, and this no question he did dope. He did PEDs or whatever. That's not anymore. That's not the question. It's how we as baseball fans, as the community of baseball, the Hall of Fame. How's this era going to be treated? Must we assume that everyone who played in the era, it's a good possibility they did dabble? And must we not assume that players that played in Joe Morgan's era didn't dabble? And if it wasn't, it was greenies, it was Coke, it was all kinds of stuff. Admittedly, it didn't change the chemical makeup of their bodies, but it certainly enhanced their ability to get out there every day. I know speed was a big part of, in one form or another, Willie Mays had his Willie juice, and Juan Marichal, and I think what Joe Morgan is saying is absolutely ridiculous from that standpoint.
Yeah, because they did cheat, and use of amphetamines was widespread in the 50s and 60s, and even in the 70s. And all I can tell you is that they were those things speed up your body, and of course in the 70s, our friend Vita Blue and others were using cocaine, which also is a central nervous system stimulant. And I don't know if it makes you run faster or throw harder, but I think the players think they do. But with the steroids build muscle.
Well, that's funny you mentioned. You said, and your exact words, that they think they do is all of it. It's what's in your head, and the recovery time. No question about that. It helps with that speed for a short period of time. Can be very beneficial, but it kills in the long period of time, as do the effects of steroids, prednisone, anything that you take in along those lines. You're a pharmacist. You know the side effects of these things. If unions are trying to do the best by the player by getting them all the money they deserve, the contracts, the freedom, and what have you, how can they say they're doing the best by the player when they cover up P-tests and endorse players doing this, and they're saying, well, you'll make a few more bucks. But, when it comes down to it, if you're on a petri dish, all the bucks in the world aren't going to help you. So
the agents like it because if they get more money, they get more commission. So
no question about that. But to have an overall concern or to profess an overall concern for the player is hogwash. So I think the unions and Major League Baseball conspired because, again, these guys were hitting home runs. You couldn't deny that Sosa and McGuire were both pumped up, but you couldn't deny that the fans loved it. The fans, I remember the commercials. Fans love big league home runs, that kind of thing. And they still do. And it's my opinion.
Ralph, I'd say just back in the old days, they used to say that home run hitters drive Cadillacs and singles hitters drive Chevrolets. Remember those days?
Yes, I think Ralph Kiner was one of those that was in on that original statement. Home run hitters drive, and it's like I say, it's today as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if the chemists that cover up, that learn how to prescribe these drugs with a cover-up and not be detected, it wouldn't surprise me that they're one step ahead of the testers, and it wouldn't surprise me if the testers, in quotes, weren't all that anxious to catch people.
Yeah, but you have to remember, Ralph, when McGuire and Sosa were going at it, and when Bonds hit 73 in 2001, what happened in '94 when they went on strike and they shut down Major League Baseball? They didn't have the World Series, and it was the first time since 1904, some 90 years.
And that's
that
the
World
and
Series was
Hud Selig is the guy who does it, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Give me
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so the owners saw in '95 they had 2 spring trainings, and then they saw people were fed up with them, with the owners and the players, and they didn't show up. And so the attendance was off, revenues were down, and when these players were using steroids, the owners turned a blind eye. They didn't care. And you can look at, the use of steroids cost at least 2 players their lives. I'm thinking of Lyle Alzado, who was with the Raiders, and the baseball player I'm thinking of is Ken Caminetti, who was a MLB most valuable player, and he's dead. And
right.
he was a user of it. And I know why why the players did it, but they did it too. It didn't help everyone. Marvin Bernard was doing it, and he still hit 235. So it didn't help everyone doing it.
Yeah, but if he weren't doing it, he might have hit 193.
Exactly.
And he might not have been in the big leagues.
Exactly.
So,
and you got to understand when these guys, the competition is so severe. There are 10 guys waiting behind you to get your job. And if you slip, if you go from a 280 hitter down to 220 and you hit 220 2 years in a row, they're going to get rid of you, and someone else is going to have your job. And you want to, as a player, you want to put food on your food for your family and all the basic needs, and prepare for your retirement. A lot of these guys don't have just high school educations. Not all of them are college educated people. They don't have anything to fall back on. They're trying to make as much money as they can. And if a guy comes up to you and says, "I can help you get better," they will listen to him, irrespective of the risk. And
were I in their position, would I have done it? Probably.
Probably, of course. You can say, look, Ralph, we're gonna get you an extra 5 years, and you're gonna be making $10 million a year. It's gonna set you up for your whole life. Would you take that deal? Sure you would. I would.
At age 20 or 25, I probably would. But with the wisdom of being in my later years and looking back, had I taken that, I might not have gotten to be 71 years old. So I don't know. It's what the trade-off is, and how are you going? Not just are you going to die early, is the quality of your remaining years, the quality of life, going to be up to the standards? If you're always going in for medical treatment and this, that, and the other thing, and things are breaking down, retirement becomes a different lifestyle. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I guess, like I say, at age 25, sure, I'm more than likely I would have.
Right.
Looking back,
because you're young and you think you're indestructible and you're going to live forever, and we know that that's not true. And so Morgan's, let's get it back to Joe Morgan's argument, where you shouldn't vote for people who have done steroids. We find that when they redid who can vote for the Major League, the writers that could vote for the Hall of Fame, they've eliminated a lot of the older writers who were in the Baseball Writers Association, who no longer wrote but were in their 80s, and those people tend to have thought that the players should be clean and they shouldn't be doing steroids. And now they have younger writers who perhaps did drugs. We live in a drug culture where kids experimented with drugs, and they view the world differently. And so they don't have the same feelings towards players who use steroids. They may have thought, well, if you can use them and do better. who's to say that the guy throwing the baseball isn't juiced? We don't know. You don't know who was juiced, who wasn't juiced. Baseball can't erase the records, and these guys played and they starred in their era, and the feeling is that they will eventually get in. Both Clemens and Bonds got over 50% of the vote last time, and
right.
We'll see
They're on their way up. If not this year, I doubt if it'll be this year. Within the remaining 4 years that they have to be eligible, the tide will have shifted, and this will be accepted as a steroid era. And there might be a notation on the plaque that you have to put their statistics into perspective a little bit, or however they word it.
But we don't know. We don't know who's in, Ralph, that did steroids.
Oh, we know that certainly there are X number of players in.
You take a guy like Nolan Ryan, who pitched at 45, 46 years old with a fastball. That defies logic.
It does, and it also, I've always thought that he did it, and in his mid-40s, I think it was, soon after he retired, he had to go through bypass surgery, and one of the side effects of steroidal medicine, and I know this firsthand from the deterioration of my son's mother, and her life, how it went down the tubes when she, as the result of having lupus, had to take prednisone.
Sure.
And it is a steroidal derivative, and it really fucks up your body. Just no other way of putting it. Sorry for my French, but and one of the things it does, it screws up your circulatory system and this, that, and the other thing. And Nolan Ryan went through some bypass surgery. I saw him behind the plate in the World Series, and he looks like an old man. I mean, just a very, very old man. He's not in good physical shape. I have to think it's the steroids. I have to put two.
It could very well be.
Yeah.
You know, I saw Jose Canseco before the start of the season last year. I had a nice chat with Jose. He looks great. He's over 50 years old, and he says he's still wearing the same clothes he did when he was 25 years old, and it doesn't appear to have had an impact on him yet. Is he still using? I don't know. I didn't ask him that. But he was an early proponent of using steroids, and he taught it to McGuire, and McGuire, I think Giambi was an admitted user, and Bonds too. You know, Bonds got really agitated when McGuire hit 70 home runs and Sosa hit 66, and he said, "I'm better than these guys." And Bonds probably would have been in the Hall of Fame without using steroids. He had
there was no question. He had over 400 stolen bases and over 400 home runs before he picked up a needle.
Yeah, and the same goes for Clemens. Would Clemens have gone into his mid-40s as a pitcher? Who knows?
No. He wouldn't have gone into his 40s, but he would have had a Hall of Fame career. He had a Hall of Fame career.
Sure.
And you know, Giambi did it, and he admitted doing it. And
right. He came up. He was
back,
up front.
and it's a lot more favorable impression when a guy can make a mistake. And, you know, we're in a country where if Pete Rose would have said, you know, I gambled, I screwed up, I'm going for help, if he said that years ago, he would have been in the Hall of Fame for sure. He would have been managing again, I'm sure. If he could have,
absolutely.
and
he deserves. There's an injustice. There are two injustices. Shoeless Joe Jackson should be in the Hall of Fame, and they're not going to let him in. He never threw a game. He hit 375 in the World Series in 1919, and he played full out. And the only reason he's in is because they said he knew about it but didn't turned the guys in, didn't rat the guys out. Well, I don't know if that's a reason for keeping a guy out of Hall of Fame. He had Hall of Fame numbers. Pete Rose had Hall of Fame numbers. And as you said, had he been up front and admitted to it, he'd be in Cooperstown now. Absolutely.
Right.
He still deserves to go into Cooperstown. And he broke Ty Cobb's record. He didn't use steroids doing it. He did it on his own ability.
Right. I do want to clear up one misconception about Pete Rose. A lot of people think, well, he didn't bet against his own team, so he really didn't affect anything. Well, let me say something. His bets were over and under bets.
Uh-huh.
They weren't. Isn't that interesting? I heard that from Peter Golenbach.
Yeah.
So you can see right away the ramifications of that. Using your pitching staff, when to use them, when not to use them. And when he didn't bet, it was like betting against the Reds, and the bookies picked right up on that. So he was diabolical. He lied, and he's a sick man. That's the thing. Gambling is an illness, just as diabetes is an illness, and just like alcoholism is an illness.
They have a groups called Gamblers Anonymous.
But you have to accept that you're a degenerate gambler, or it's on the corner. You can go to a meeting, but you have to pick up the phone and call them and get down there. And apparently he did try to accept some help early on when this broke, when he was still managing, and then went into denial. And it's tragic, and it's a loss for baseball, because what a coach and an instructor he would make.
Absolutely.
And he was apparently a tremendous manager and a tremendous influence. A bunch of young guys, Joe Youngblood told me stories on the air about the influence. When Joe came up with the Reds, Pete Rose was playing, and in his last years, when he came back to the Reds, Pete Rose was managing, so that he knows a lot about Rose and his positive influence on young players coming up and developing, and you have to this day, no matter what he's gone through, you have to admire the fact that he, like Billy Martin and others, were incredible overachievers. They got more out of their limited talent than is imaginable. And those are the players that I admire. I admire the other ones too, but if you're born with natural skills and everything seems to come easy, that's one thing. But to make the big leagues with Pete Rose's ability and to hit 4,000 hits, it's one of the all-time tragedies. I'd like to see him, because eventually, probably after he passes away, like with Leo DeRocher, very hated by very many people, and didn't get to, and rightfully so. He was a despicable human, if the truth be known.
I don't know if I told you the story. My parents were from Hartford, Connecticut, and my dad played semi-pro baseball in Hartford. And one year they went up to Springfield, Massachusetts, and my dad played a game against the Leo DeRocher. He never spoke highly of DeRocher.
I can imagine that. Yes, that's where he was from. East Springfield. I had cousins in Holyoke, which was right down the block, and I got to see in Springfield. They had a AA team when I was a kid. the Giants did, and I got to see a fellow by the name of Al Stanek, who had a cup of coffee, maybe a little more in the major leagues, but he pitched a no-hitter, a 7-inning no-hitter for me in a minor league game.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was the first minor league game I'd ever been to, as a matter of fact, and wow, I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah, so let's get back to who else is going to be on the ballot this year. I think that who could go into the Hall of Fame. I think that Vladimir Guerrero is a candidate. I think
Guerrero and Hoffman got a lot of votes last year, just missed, and I think they'll go in. That's my guess. I think I'd like to see Walker from the Cardinals.
Oh, Larry Walker?
Larry Walker.
Did he play for the Expos? Did he play for the Cardinals? He played for the Rockies.
I'm sorry, the Cardinals, the Rockies, I meant. Yes. Yeah. Larry Walker.
Yeah, he's a Canadian guy. He'd be great.
Yeah.
He deserves to win.
That would be nice.
Who else is on the ballot?
Well, let's see. Let me just look here. I'll try to bring this thing up. It's not coming up. So we'll play another game, another Hall of Fame game. Jerry, of all the Hall of Famers that are in, who do you think shouldn't be in?
Who shouldn't be in? That's an interesting question. I'd have to look at the list who's in. They got 220 guys. And
okay, but anybody off the top of your head when they got elected, you said, "Well, that's an injustice."
No, I can't think of anyone at the moment. I mean, usually, most of the guys, certainly the ones that are going now, are deserving to go in. So,
right.
You know, they get 75% they got to get 75% of the vote, and it's hard to say who shouldn't be in. I think there was one guy that came in through the Veterans Committee that maybe shouldn't be in, and I know he was controversial when he went in. It was Bill Mazeroski. He was only about a 260.
He is brought up. We've had this discussion on a few of the shows this week because, again, the ballots just came out, and he does come up, and I would say, if you think about it, he was the best fielding second baseman of our time when we were growing up.
Right. Well, yeah, there's no question about that.
And if you combine that with that dramatic hit, that dramatic home run in the '60 World Series, I can see why, you know, they were trying to go for some defense. It was the Ozzie Smith type thing. If I can't really dispute it from the standpoint that he was the dominating second baseman of his time in the National League. And I don't even know, is Nellie Fox in?
No.
Probably not. But I guess if Mazeroski should be in, Nellie Fox should be in. And that brings back the argument, is he a Hall of Famer or is he just a very good ball player? Same could probably be said of Enos Slaughter.
Right. Very good ball player.
But, yeah, very good ball player. But a Hall of Famer? I don't know. What's your take on Gil Hodges? Should he be in?
Gil Hodges is another very good ball player. And
right.
But
combined with his stats, he has some incredibly good stats. He hit the second most home runs in the 50s in the National League.
Yeah, I mean the numbers. You know, you got to make a case for him. You got to look at the times back in the 50s. the big slugger in the 50s was Ralph Kiner, and
Right.
but most of the guys, if they hit 30 home runs in the 50s, that was a lot of home runs. They weren't hitting 40, 50 home runs like they are now. They were more interested in moving what they call moving the lines. Guy get on base, you're going to hit and run them, or single, double. National League played that kind of baseball for years. So you got to take the numbers in perspective for the times, and if you do that, maybe Hodges has a case to get in.
Right.
Enjoying Jackie Robinson and Campanella in the Hall of Fame. So
I think because there were so many great stars that are in the Hall on that Dodger team, that might have kept him back a little bit as well.
Possibly.
But if you combine his Miracle Mets managerial experience, and he died very young, and that hurts him. Out of sight, out of mind a little bit, and who knows how he would have added to the number of wins in his managerial career, and this, that, and the other thing.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think that if you look at a guy like Rafael Palmeiro, and he's not in because he did his imitation of Bill Clinton, and when he said, "I've never used steroids," and a month later he tested positive for steroids. And Palmeiro's got over 500 homers and 3,000 hits. Those are Hall of Fame numbers. He should be in.
No question.
But they're not going to let him in. He has Hall of Fame numbers. McGuire wasn't as good a hitter. I think he was about a 280 hitter lifetime, but he has 580 some home runs or close to it. He should be in also. And again, his performance in Congress was horrible. I don't want to talk about the past. Well, you got to talk about the past because we're here to talk about the past. If he would have copped
to it right there and then, and if he'd have come out and said this is the way it was, remember that you're a pharmacist. You know that what he was using initially, the rules back then, he was taking legal drugs.
It was a supplement sold in a health food store. There was nothing illegal about using it whatsoever. It was a precursor of steroids, androstenedione. Hard to say.
Right. Now, that's not to say he didn't use full-out steroids.
Right.
But
we don't know.
You don't know. But you do know that Tony La Russa knew.
Knew.
Right. So when they talk about him going into the Hall of Fame, he was an endorser just as well. He just kept a blind eye. He had to know every nook and cranny of that clubhouse, what was going on.
And why did he do it? Tony La Russa's job depended on winning. He needed to win, otherwise he would get tired. And so they were willing to turn a blind eye.
And most of all, as you said, they had that strike, and they had to come back. No one was going out. No one was going out to the ballpark. Nobody cared. And all of a sudden, the Sosa-McGuire thing rejuvenates baseball. You have to, good, bad, or indifferent, you have to give the era some credit because it's feeding in to what the fans want. Sensationalism, home runs, breaking records, legitimate or not. And
sure, people want to come out and see Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run that goes 575 feet. They want to come out and see these. They want to see Aaron Judge. They want to see guys that are hitting home runs. They're not going to come out to see the Marvin Bernards of the world or the Denard Spans, but they want to come out and see Mike Pence.
I think that Altuve, his performance in the last couple of years and his World Series performance this year, wow, he's going to change things because the Dodgers got beat in the World Series by the small ball.
Yeah.
They
Oh, did they?
they had guys getting runners over, scoring guys, key hits, this, that, and the other thing. And we talked before about the pendulum. Wait and see. The pendulum of good old-fashioned National League baseball may come back. I'll ask you this, Jerry. Are you a DH fan?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I wouldn't be upset if the National League would do it, and I wouldn't be upset if they did away with it. Still got to get 27 outs in a game.
Well, I think it changes.
The game is definitely played. It's played differently. With the DH, you don't have to. You still take the pitcher out, but you don't have to make the decision if a guy is going good and you're losing 1-0. If you have to take him out and bring in a relief pitcher because you got a man on second and bring a pinch hitter in.
But that's an intriguing part of the game.
That's part of the game, and the double switch
that is a big part of the game and an interesting part of the game where you can play devil's advocate when you're talking to the guy next to you at the game and watching. Should they bring him in? Who are they going to bring in? Is the relief pitcher good? This, that, and the other thing. I think it's a great part of the game, and I think if you're going to swing a bat, you better bring a glove with you too. That's just
Well, I wouldn't be upset if the American League went back to it. I don't think they're going to because the DH is so ubiquitous. It's in the minor leagues. They use it in the colleges, and the kids are all using it. Whereas when the National League is the last holdout, and it requires. But you got to hit.
And it's a high-paying union position.
Right. You got a guy like Madison Bumgarner. He's a threat when he comes to the plate. He can.
That's
hit.
right. That's right. And I remember when I was a kid, there were a lot of good hitting pitchers. Don Newcomb, Bob Turley.
Don Drysdale, Warren Spahn. All these guys could hit. These guys were two-way players. And it's kind of interesting. If a pitcher hit $175, he was a good hitter. And now you got shortstops hitting $175 playing in the major leagues, which is unheard of. And I don't know how they keep their jobs, but they're hanging in there. Guys for the Mendoza line all the time.
Yeah. I met Mr. Mario Mendoza. I got to meet him in the minor leagues one time.
Nice.
He's a very nice guy, as a matter of fact. And there were worse hitters at that time, too. He just happened to, somebody named it, I don't know what it was, but he was flirting with that line, and somebody named it that, and he got the bad rep. Hey, before we go, the A's made two moves in the last few weeks. One, they acquired a relief pitcher named Pagan, and which makes me laugh a little bit because Jose Pagan was an old giant when I was a kid, following them when they first moved out here, and I always liked that name. So, but pretty good relief pitcher, and they acquired another relief pitcher today that really.
Yeah, they signed Yasmar Petit, who pitched for the Giants.
Yes, from the Angels, and I think that's a good signing.
That was a good move. I like that. They really have to rebuild the bullpen because they traded away Doolittle and Madsen, and the bullpen was a mess at the end of the season, all season long after that. And hopefully their starters will stay healthy, and they may show some. They may do okay. The A's, they traded Ryan Healy, which I wasn't happy about because they would have had a tremendous lineup, but he was a liability on the field at first and third. His fielding was not very good. And the only other spot they had for him was to be a DH, and they want Chris Davis to DH, and they're going to go with someone, and I don't know who they're going to put in left field, but they'll figure something out. Hopefully they'll get another big bat out there.
Well, it's early, and they're making moves before. Very quiet all around baseball. People are holding off on a bunch of stuff.
They're waiting for. Let's see what happens with John Carlos Stanton. where he goes. And once they do that, then you'll see someone sign J.D. Martinez and some of the other free agents. But right now, everything is being held up on the Stanton matter. And the Marlins have told Stanton to expect a trade. So they're not hiding the fact that they want to move him. And the question is, where does he go? Stanton has told the Marlins he will not accept a trade to St. Louis or Boston, but he would prefer San Francisco or L.A. because he's from Southern California. So I think the Giants are gonna get him somehow. They're willing to take on that big load. And
now there's another name out there that the Giants might be interested in, and that's McCutchen.
That would be to play center field. Span.
Yeah, I think that would be a terrific signing.
That'd be a great. Well, they have to trade for him. I don't think he's a free agent.
Trade for him. Yeah.
Yeah, but even so, can you imagine with Pence, McCutchen, and Stanton? They'd have to move Pence to left field.
They're not going to get both guys. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
They won't get. Getting Stanton would be okay. Getting McCutchen would be okay. But I doubt if the Giants are in a position to.
And I believe that D. Gordon's going to be in the package too, because they're going to trade Panic. They'd have a leadoff guy. If they got those three guys, oh my God, they'd have a terrific lineup.
Are they talking about trading Panic?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Panic.
I didn't know that.
That's on the Stanton deal, to go to the Marlins.
Oh, so that's part of the package.
Yeah.
Okay. Would the rest of the package be a combination of money and minor leaguers, or would they be?
Yeah, they got two. They're talking about Tyler Beatty and I think someone by the name of Shaw. So, and plus maybe money and maybe
Belt.
Maybe not. We'll see what happens. I know they weren't happy with Belt, but with the fact that the Giants didn't have any power hitters in the lineup, can you imagine Belt either hitting before or after Stanton? He'd be getting pitches to hit. It might change their whole relationship. Right now, they didn't have. Belt led the team with 18 home runs. They didn't have. They could throw to Belt. They didn't have to worry about him hitting the ball out of the park.
I'd like to see Pence remain a little more healthy and work out something where he just doesn't go balls out all the time and end up injuring himself.
Yeah, but that's the way he is. So, anyway.
Okay. Hey, listen, great show. Nancy obviously missed connections. We'll catch her next week. You'll be back for your last appearance here and after that, your trip. We talked off air a little bit. You have a very interesting cruise plan. Tell us a little bit about it, Barry.
Yeah, we're going to be flying to Cape Town, South Africa. We're going to go on a safari for a few days in South Africa near Port Elizabeth, and then we go on a 30-day cruise with 4 stops in South Africa, a stop in Mozambique. We're going to Zanzibar and Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, Mombasa in Kenya, then to the Seychelles and then the Maldives, then off to Colombo, Sri Lanka, then Phuket in Thailand, Penang and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and finally Singapore, and then we're in Singapore for 2-3 days before we head home to San Francisco. And it's a phenomenal trip. We're going with 2 other couples from the Bay Area, and looking forward to it. It's part of the world I've never seen. The only time I was in Singapore was 3 years ago on the way home.
Jerry, you could do some international scouting for the A's while you're over there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Just a thought. I don't think you'll be thinking about much baseball while you're over there. That's for sure.
No, I'm going to be bummed out because I'm going to miss about 20 games of the Warriors, and I've been covering the Warriors for Sports Radio Service as you know this year. I covered all the games last year in the playoffs. I'm really going to miss that. So
Well, this is Oakland sports. We're not just limited to the A's. Give me a little rundown about what's happening with the Warriors. Today is the 30th of November. The show should be posted within a few days, but what's going on? I know that Curry is hurt, and
he's got a bone bruise on it. His hand was swollen last night. It was all taped up, and he had trouble making passes. He had trouble shooting, but he adapted to the situation, made an adjustment in the overtime period, and he scored 13 of his 28 points in the 5-minute overtime period. So that was sensational. The team is 16-6. They don't have the best record in the NBA. The Houston Rockets do at the moment, and that could be important coming down the stretch because they wouldn't have home court advantage throughout the playoffs, and that's a huge advantage in basketball. So they've been sloppy with their passing. They made too many turnovers so far this year, and they have to get better. And that's what Steve Kerr told them last night. You just got to handle the ball better.
Hey, Tally told me last night the same thing. You got to be a better broadcaster, Ralph. You got to do these shows better. You got to get better, and I'm trying. So maybe when you get back from your trip, you'll notice an appreciable difference in my ability to do what I do.
No, you do a great job. I think we won't
look into many positive changes. You get to be a certain age, you probably hooked into whatever it is that I am. Jerry, it's a pleasure. I can't wait to see you when you get back, and next week it'll be your final thing here. Maybe Nancy and Morgan and you and your lady friend can all come on next week, and we'll get it together, and it'd be great.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. Thank you very much, my friend, and we'll talk to you next time. If you're listening out there, if you really like what we're doing and want to show some appreciation, take a bunch of lightly used children's books, put them in a carton, and take them down to your local Head Start in whatever city you're in. There's a Head Start program. Get kids reading, get them ready for school, and make me happy. That's all. Everything's about making me happy, huh, Jerry? Sad life. But we'll see you next week, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Over and out. Adios, Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph, I'm here.
Okay, sweetie, love you. Love you, bye.
Ralph, you still there?